When you become pro-Asian enough, you start listening to Black people and become pro-Black as well. I'm not talking about individual Asian advancement where you play pick-me to white people, cater to them, make yourself smaller for them, maybe marry one of them, and then move up in society that way. No, that's not what I'm talking about. When you're interested in the liberation of the Asian American collective and in Asians around the world freeing themselves, and specifically to Asian Americans because we are a relatively new ethnic group in America, you realize that Black Americans have been liberating themselves for as long as they have been here, for over 400 years. You look at the way that they ostracize the pick-me's in their community, the Candace Owens, you can see what happened with Onyeka, the Danish deception girl. Black people, and specifically Black women, did not let them off the hook. Candace Owens can no longer go to Black people for any kind of support or help because as a collective, they have disowned her. Why are Asians not doing more of that? Look at the way that Black people have created their own spaces, created their own communities throughout American history. Even when white people have gone and tried to destroy them, they have managed to create their own culture, their own language. They're protective of those spaces. They embrace their ethnic features and hair texture instead of just doing whatever Karen is doing. And this, I'm talking generally. I'm not saying that every Black American is like this. I'm saying that a lot of them are, and that the general sentiment that I get from that community is that they are proud to be who they are. So if you're Asian and you're thinking, I want to be able to wear my qipao to school. I don't like it when people gentrify my food after making fun of it my entire childhood. I don't like being fetishized, and I will not marry someone who does that to me. When you start thinking this way, you just look right on over to Black people, and they've already had those thoughts. They've already done the same thing. You just do it in your own Asian flavor. And this doesn't even get into the fact that our liberation is all tangled up in each other. Like all the minorities in the US and in the world, overthrowing white supremacy is like a collective effort. And Black people have been telling us this since we got here. I'm just hoping that if I say it, then maybe you will listen.
I'm gonna rant a little about Asians who want to be white so bad. I was having a conversation with someone the other day and she went to a gathering, right? These people are Asian, right? But there are two white guys. Someone brought the Malona ice cream. The girl, who's Asian, goes, "Ew, is it an Asian ice cream?" And then she'd make comments like, "I wouldn't know because I don't have an Asian friend." She made another comment that said something like, "This feels like a whole bunch of Asians playing with two super smart white guys, playing a word game." Some shit like that. It's so cringe just seeing Asian people try to cater to white people. Asian people act like proximity to whiteness makes them superior. You can literally feel the energy shift when someone has internalized racism. It's this weird mix of embarrassment, superiority, and "I'm not like those other Asians" vibes. And honestly, it's painful to watch. I've seen it so many times. Some Asians act like the second they get a white friend group, they level up in the social hierarchy. Suddenly, everything Asian is cringe or weird or low tier. And you know what's the funniest part? They'll distance themselves from anything remotely Asian like it's toxic, and then they will over cater to their white partners or friends. Do you hear yourselves? It's like watching someone actively shrink themselves to fit into a box that was never built for them in the first place. Look, I get it, alright? A lot of Asians grow up being praised for assimilation. A lot of us are raised to believe whiteness equals safety, opportunity, acceptance. That's literally how internalized racism works. Acting like being white adjacent makes you superior to your own culture. Acting disgusted at your own food, your own features, your own background. It's not about hating anyone. It's more about calling out a pattern that harms all of us. Because when you look down at your own identity, the world learns to do the same. So yeah, Asians who think being white makes them better, just know that the rest of us see right through that.
Okay, guys, there's something important about conversations about race that we don't always talk about enough. Different communities can have different histories and experiences while still recognizing that some of their struggles are connected. Okay, guys, these videos bring Asian Americans into that conversations and ask a bigger question. What happens when communities that have historically been separated start realizing that solidarity can be more powerful than division? Okay, guys, this is Trevor Commentaries, and if you're new to the channel, please remember to subscribe, like, and also to comment. So guys, let us continue watching the videos till the end, then I'll be back with more reactions on it.
I've been seeing a lot more content about Black and Asian solidarity, so I wanted to share my story. Before I was embraced by Asian folks, I found a sense of belonging in the Black community first. It's where I learned about brotherhood and camaraderie, and also how to rap. And even now, as someone who's unapologetically Asian as fuck, my love and respect remains the same. Because honestly, if the Black community in Atlanta didn't support me and encourage me to rap when I was a teen, I probably wouldn't be an artist right now. By the way, these type of cultural exchanges have been happening way before me, and it's more common than you think. So don't let social media make you think we're all against each other.
Why do Asian people hate being asked, "Where are you from?" Oh my God. See collective, it's because we've all had that question. Where am I from? Is the answer Los Angeles good enough? No.
Never.
Where are you really from? Like, do you want to know which suburb of Los Angeles? Is that what you mean? No. Like, where are you really from? Dude, just ask me, what is my ethnicity if you really want to know? But it annoys me.
But it's the why.
Why?
Why do you need
Why
to
is
know?
it important? You know why it's important? Because you want to tell me how much you love K-pop. Because you want to tell me 안녕하세요. Because you want to be able to say something. And I understand. It's not to say that people aren't just genuinely interested in you or like want to get to know you.
1%.
But I feel like if somebody genuinely wants to get to know you, these things will come out in conversation anyway. I don't know any Korean person that in the first maybe 10 sentences doesn't proclaim, oh, I'm Korean. Let me take you to my favorite Korean restaurant or whatever. If it comes up in conversation, don't worry. Like, we'll tell you, you'll know. And we'll probably volunteer it if you give us enough time. I mean, and when I say enough time, like 3 minutes, maybe. Like, that's all I need. I'll tell you. And then they get so offended, right? Where are you from? I'm from LA. Where are you really from? Well, I'm like really from LA. No, but like really, I'm from those two people.
Yeah.
That's where I'm really, really from. Those two people right there. That's where I'm from.
When they used to ask where my parents were from, I sometimes used to just lie. Be like, also from LA.
I thought you were going to say like,
I just wanted to be
Pluto.
so contrarian, you know what I mean? Like really stick it to them. Like,
Right.
why can't I be from here? Because
Right.
I don't know how well educated you are, but like your family's not from here either.
Right. Well, and that of course plays into the perpetual foreigner myth, right? There's no way I could be from LA. Look at my face. I can't be from Los Angeles, even though I was born and raised in Los Angeles. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, what do you mean?
Let's ignore
Tell
the
me.
fact that Koreatown's like a third of Los
Yeah.
Angeles.
What do you mean? I don't look like I could be from here. I mean,
Y'all want to know something that nobody's ready for in 2025 except for those who already seem to fucking know it? Black people are the aboriginals of every continent. Dark-skinned people are the aboriginals of every continent. Native Americans migrated over the ice bridge from Siberia, that would be Asia, and became what we now know as Native Americans. Yes, they lived off the land. Yes, they knew how to give back to it, so therefore they should be considered indigenous. But the people who were on that land before them and the ice bridge even formed were black people. Black people also built pyramids on every continent. That's why there are pyramids on every continent. The Buddha was a dark-skinned man. The Chinese, we have a lot of trouble denying that we come from melanin. We do. We've tried. We have not succeeded. The difference between us and every other group is that we can admit to the fact that we came from melanin. Why can't everybody else? It's not erasure to say that black people were the aboriginals of every country. We're not saying you didn't exist. We're saying you came after. What's so hard to understand? Just like me saying that Koreans came from China. It's not me saying that they don't have their own culture. That's how all of these Korean nationalists took it in my comments. Oh, you're saying we don't have our own culture or genetic identity? No, I'm saying that culture and genetic identity came from us. If you are not tapped in, and you don't talk to marginalized groups, and haven't spent any time with them, y'all gonna be offended by what I'm saying. Some of y'all only research your own identity, and that's it. And that's the only content you make besides your matcha. So, I don't care who I have to lose, what followers. I already warned people when I got the big video, right? That I'm not the nice Asian. You're gonna find a reason to dislike me. This may be one of them. Trying to be seen keeps us from opening our eyes. Black people were here first. Black people were here first. Black people were here first. And whoever that pisses off needs to leave my channel, needs to block me. All the above. Koreans, their genetics, their culture came from the Chinese. From what is now known as China. And where did the Chinese come from? Black people. And if y'all are upset with any of this information, go away!
Alright, I'll bite. Black and Asian solidarity isn't just something that I want, it's something that has lasted for generations. Now, I'm not going to deny that there have been instances of tension between the Black and Asian community. There have been individuals in each of our communities that have caused harm onto one another. At the same time, and most importantly, by and large, both communities want to work together and build towards a better future. And let's take a look at history. The abolishment of the Chinese Exclusion Act was largely due to black civil rights leaders advocating for it, which led to the passing of the Hart-Celler Act in 1965. And there have been leaders such as Yuri Kochiyama and Grace Lee Boggs who have stood side by side with the black community fighting for the liberation of black people. And for years, the Japanese American leaders have used reparations given to Japanese Americans after Japanese internment as justification for why the black community should also receive reparations. So yeah, like any community and people, we have differences, but there's a hell of a lot more love.
So unlike this platform, on Threads, you can kind of tell who I am, especially if you click on my profile picture, but it's not super obvious. And earlier today, I made a post, text only, saying, in addition to being a first-class athlete, Taylor Townsend is part of one of the most educated demographics in the United States. That other one is just a sore loser. And a commenter, a white guy, came back with, Taylor Townsend isn't Asian. So how about you run those statistics again with master's degrees and doctorate degrees? And you know I'm not going to stand for that. So I came back with, as an Asian American, how about I run statistics for bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, and doctorate degrees on your demographic? And his response was deleted so fast. But it's not the first time on Threads that a white commenter has started to argue with me in a way that makes it clear that they assume I'm black. And that's always a reminder to me how comfortable they are in the assumption that the only people who support black people are black people, and at how comfortably they reach for Asian American identity to weaponize against black Americans. And part of me feels like if you're a white person who's going to pull that garbage, then stand 10 toes down on it. Don't be a coward and delete it when you're called out. On the other hand, part of me is glad that commenter knew well enough to be deeply embarrassed that he had to try to use the education levels of Asian Americans to challenge the education levels of black women because his demographic is too mediocre to even enter the conversation.
I'm mad at Asian Americans because why are we so smart but so silent? What's with the silence? I suspect that if we opened our mouths, we would side with black people and other brown people as the real American heroes. Yeah, we're brown, not white. But this would disrupt the white supremacy brainwash we're caught in. And deep down, we hate ourselves for siding with whiteness. We know they're wrong. Our silence is the sound of us hating ourselves. But that's the Squid Game trap that they set for us, an Asian American matrix that messes with our reality. And it's all based on hating black people. You know, the ones we're all secretly trying to copy, even the white peoples. White supremacy isn't smart, but it's tricky like that. Do you like being tricked? I don't know any Asians who put up with that. We gotta decolonize ourselves and find Asian joy. Therein lies our...
Why is this? Why do they think they're white?
Okay, I wish I could stitch that video, but basically that person is asking, this person wants to know why so many Korean Americans try so hard to be white. Or in other words, why do so many Korean Americans try so desperately hard to be accepted by white people, and why do we think that we will benefit from white supremacy? And the answer is US imperialism. It's always US imperialism. Particularly migration pathways that were carved out by military occupation. So let me explain. When I was really young, my mom used to always tell me, oh, if you go to Korea, if you live in Korea, people there are going to hate you. And I remember that confusing me so much as a kid because why would they hate me without knowing me? And so I tried to, press her for an answer, and she would just say, oh, it's for no reason. They're just jealous that you get to live in the US. Flash forward, when I'm in school or college and I'm taking Asian American Studies courses, classes in critical race studies, and I'm like, oh, I get it now. A lot of us already know the US is not this benevolent country that takes care of its citizens, let alone immigrants, indigenous people, even its own veterans. And abroad, the US terrorizes the global south through military occupation and other means, which includes Korea. You don't ever hear about or see Korean people in Korea protesting US occupation, but it's there. And there's still this dream or hope of both Koreas one day reuniting or being reunified. Very generally speaking, more recent Korean immigration into the US, or maybe I should say from the 1970s onwards, these are people who have the means to. They have the money, the capital, the resources, the social connections, and maybe even more importantly, they want to come and live here.
So, are the people who resent the U.S. for imposing themselves into the homeland, dividing the nation into two, and in the process separating families forever, are they going to want to uproot their lives to live in the country responsible for that pain and suffering and ultimately this loss of self-determination? Or are the people who sympathize with the U.S. and view the country as this welcoming, benevolent nation, as the saviors almost for coming into the war, are they going to be the ones to want to move and live here? The people that immigrated are probably people who sympathized with U.S. involvement in the war and who also subscribed to the idea of the American dream. And generally speaking, tended to be of the ruling class, and they get here, they either become disillusioned by it, the American dream, and start to question the ideas they've been told, or they hang on to it even tighter and blame other groups of people, other groups of marginalized people, for not being able to self-actualize this dream. This is just coming from my experience, observations, things that I've learned as a Korean American who has family members on both ends of the political spectrum. But, and again, I'm simplifying things a lot, but I also think that
as an Asian American millennial that grew up before BTS and before K-pop and K-dramas blew up, the world looked pretty different. I experienced my fair share of racism growing up and just in my day-to-day. I love that the world looks different. Asians are kind of seen as cool now. And Asian kids aren't gonna grow up with the same type of trauma that millennials and older generations grew up with being Asian in America, which I love. I'm so happy about. But I thought I'd take a stroll down memory lane and kind of walk through some things that happened in my life that were kind of racist and weird. So the first thing, I was born and raised in New York. When I went to elementary school in Queens, I was put in ESL. And even at that age, I thought that was kind of weird. I was like, why the hell am I in ESL? I can speak English. I can read and write English. Like, I don't understand. This feels kind of racist to me. But yeah, nevertheless, I was in ESL for several years. I don't remember exactly how many years, but that was something that happened. And a lot of my classmates were also Korean Americans born in America. So that was weird, kind of racist, no? And actually, I'm curious if they still do that to this day. Let me know in the comments if you guys know. 2, this is something that kids used to do a lot. And, you know, I can't really fault kids because they're kids, so they don't really know better, I guess. Like, they don't know much. I didn't experience this personally because my name is Laura, so I did have an American name. But other people with, you know, Korean names or just like ethnic names, if someone's like, oh, my name is Jiyoung, you know, then they're like, oh, what's that in English? What's the American version of that name? And it's like, there is no American version, bitch. Like, it's just a Korean name. It's just a Korean name. There is no American version. You're living in a Eurocentric world where, you know, like, for example, if there's an Italian name of like Davide, in English, it's David, right? So you're living in this Eurocentric world where names are all like Latin based, and that's just not the case for most countries in the world. So I feel like that doesn't happen as much nowadays. And people, you know, I feel like our collective consciousness has grown and progressed to where we now understand and realize like, oh, Anglo-Saxon names aren't the baseline. So that's great. But that's something that I used to see happening a lot. 3rd, this wasn't exactly like racism, but just, you know, something that I remember and I'll never forget. But I was eating a sandwich at Court Street Grocers, sandwich shop in New York. They have a sandwich with kimchi in it. And this happened like 7 years ago, before Korean food really took off and became popular. I feel like everyone knows what kimchi is now. But there was this group of people eating there, and this girl is like, oh, what's kimchi? And then her friend is like, it's fire roasted cabbage, actually. The audacity. And yes, these were white people. And yes, the person saying that was indeed a white man. But I was just blown away by the audacity, the caucasity. I'm like, he didn't even say it with any shred or inkling of doubt. It wasn't like I think it's like fire roasted cabbage. He was very sure of himself, and he was like, it's fire roasted cabbage. I was, me being Korean, listening to this, I was shook. Next, of course, the classic, and this still happens to me to this day. Not as often, thankfully. The classic, where are you from? I'm from New York. No, where are you really from? I'm from New York. Okay, where are your parents from? Used to happen a lot more. Used to happen all the time, actually. But it doesn't happen as, I still get that question though. I still get that question, but it doesn't happen as often. So I'm happy about that. Yay, progress. Just a little walk down memory lane. Let me know if you guys have any similar experiences or other experiences that you experienced growing up that, you know, you don't experience anymore, because we have experienced some progress in this world, which is great.
Asian people in the US are so weird at liking white people more than their own people.
Think of it like this. When COVID hit, remember all the anti-Asian rhetoric that was going around America? Now imagine that energy stretched over a lifetime. Growing up, I'd hear that Asian men are not attractive, we only know how to do math, we can't drive, we have the funny accents, the slanty eyes. It's really hard, given all of that, to grow up as an Asian man in America and be proud of who you are. Now imagine coming home and the people in your house are Asian parents who don't express their emotions, who lay hands on you, who don't ever apologize, who make you feel less than for not wanting to be a doctor or engineer. Mine also called me stupid. Oh, you'll never get into this school, you'll never do this. Look at my friend's son and what he's doing. And so when both your indoor and outdoor environments make you question your self-worth, of course you're going to try and be someone else. I think that's human nature. And in America, what group do you look towards? White people. They are the heroes in all the movies, they're on all the magazines. It is very easy to put them on a pedestal, which I did, admittedly. And my story isn't unique. Now, these days, I am proud of who I am, and my heritage, and my facial structure. But it took a long time and a lot of personal growth and a lot of help from cultural phenomena like K-pop. There is so much more to say about this topic, like, for example, how a lot of Asian Americans don't feel connected to their extended families because they're not Asian enough, or how I in college saw up close white people with their close families and how that impacted me. But I want to keep it short. I hope this helps you and other Asians who didn't grow up in America understand us better.
As a kid, I didn't really learn about anti-Blackness at all. And it was only when I got older and I was looking into my own history as Asian Americans that I realized how much we gained from the African American civil rights movements. Our first leaders in the Asian American civil rights movement were heavily inspired by the Black Panthers. In fact, some of them were even members of the Black Panthers. This man here is Richard Aoki. He was one of 3 Japanese Americans who joined the Black Panthers. Especially in the 1960s and 70s, there were many Japanese Americans involved in civil rights activism, like Richard Aoki, I just mentioned, Yuri Kochiyama, Mike Tagawa, I believe, and part of that was from their experiences of internment. Even today, Japanese Americans remain one of the most progressive ethnicities of Asians in America. And I do want to re-emphasize that you shouldn't have to get personal benefits from something in order to empathize with that cause, but I want to just really drive home how much Asian Americans have benefited from Black Americans. For instance, it might be hard to read this, but Langston Hughes is here speaking and criticizing the use of the atomic bomb. He basically believes that it would not be used against white countries. Now, obviously, the atomic bomb has not been used again since it was dropped on Nagasaki, but he had valid reasons to fear that. I mean, General Douglas MacArthur was very much of the mind that we should just nuke Korea off the map and that would solve the communist fear during the Korean War. And Martin Luther King, in his 1967 address, I believe, in this address he spoke to recognize the horrors and the tragedies that Vietnamese people had to face during the Vietnam War. Malcolm X, friends with Yuri Kochiyama, was also an advocate against the use of nuclear weapons in Cold War Asia. I'm not trying to say this in order to diminish any racism that and prejudices that the Asian American and African American community have had against each other throughout centuries, but what I am saying is that we ultimately have a common struggle and cause against white imperialism, and that trying to constantly blame one side or the other and buy into white supremacist ideas is harmful to everyone. This page is from the Nadia Kim's book, Imperial Subjects, and she speaks about how even Korean soldiers and civilians noticed the difference in treatment that white soldiers and black soldiers received. And additionally, they showed that they felt a little more companionship and fraternity with black Americans than with white Americans based on similar experiences of oppression. And some people are going to accuse me of cherry picking, and I do agree. I am picking out examples that support my idea that black people and Asians can be allies for each other. There's been plenty of examples of crimes against both sides by either party, but I don't think that that ultimately should be what we allow to characterize our community's relationships with each other. And especially as an Asian American, I've firsthand benefited from a lot of black movements. I mean, when I was a child, I grew up in a predominantly white space, and I would be a little distant from other children of color because I was worried about becoming a bigger target for harassment and racism that I faced a lot. And as I got older, I went to a high school that was, 51% black. It was very diverse, and that's where I first learned to really love and accept myself. And it was because oftentimes owed to these friendships I'd formed with black women. And as somebody who is dating a black woman, I feel like it's my duty. Like, I've been her friend for years before we were dating. And I think I do need to learn more about my partner's community in order to be a better support for them. And I think that too many of us don't really consume content outside of our specific niches, or we only want to learn about things that we find directly applicable to ourselves. But at the end of the day, we're all connected, and I think learning about each other can really never be a bad thing. Because I am only human, there are some subjects that I generally won't make videos about just because I've received a lot of hateful comments in the past for trying to bring that to light. But I do want to still try to encourage education and discourse. So I think in the next video, I'm going to make about why there's a lot of Asian-owned businesses in black neighborhoods and other histories that I think are applicable to our daily lives. But I do apologize if I don't address something that people might want me to. Just because in the past I have had to private videos because I was taking a toll.
Okay guys, welcome back. Okay, the thing that stood out to me in this discussion is about the model minority idea and how it can create distance between Asian Americans and Black Americans. The argument is that these divisions don't just happen naturally. They were shaped by broader systems that sometimes encourage minority groups to compare themselves against each other instead of questioning the structure affecting all of them. And honestly, it makes you think, why should one minority community have to distance itself from another just to be accepted? Why should success be measured how closely a community can get to witness or a certain social standard? Okay guys, the speaker also points out something important. Black activists played a major role in pushing civil rights changes that benefited other communities as well. The Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965 is one of the examples. So, when we talk about American civil rights history, it shouldn't just be viewed through separate racial stories. Sometimes, the progress made by one community opens door for other too. Raises another question. If people have benefited from struggles they didn't personally fight in, shouldn't they also be willing to stand up with others when those communities are facing injustice? Okay guys, the video also challenges the idea that Asian Americans should try to separate themselves from other minority groups in order to move forward. I understand some people might be tempted to think that way. If society rewards you for being seen as different from another marginalized group, it can create pressure to accept that division. But where does that lead? If communities constantly compare for acceptance instead of challenging unfair systems. Does anybody really win? That is why idea of collective liberation is important here. It doesn't mean pretending that Asian Americans and Black experiences are identical. They clearly aren't. Each community has its own history, struggle, and challenges, but solidarity doesn't require identical experiences. It requires recognizing that other communities fight for dignity and equal matters too. And I think that is where the generational shift mentioned in the video becomes interesting. Younger Asian Americans are increasingly having conversations about solidarity, representation, racism, and the importance of standing with other communities. The willingness to question older divisions is significant because at the end of the day, what kind of progress is possible if communities only fight for themselves? The strongest part of this discussion is the reminder that history is connected. The civil rights victories of the past didn't belong to only one group. The people who challenged discrimination helped to create changes that affect the country more broadly. So, perhaps the bigger lesson is this. Asian Americans supporting Black Americans isn't about choosing one community over another. It's about recognizing that justice becomes stronger when people refuse to let racial division determine who deserves support. And to conclude, I think this conversation gives us something important to think about. Different communities may have different history, but that doesn't mean they have to stand apart when it comes to fairness and dignity. If people choose the solidarity instead of division, they can challenge systems that keep communities separated and work towards a society where everyone has a fair opportunity to move forward. Okay, guys, that is the real power of standing together. And I think that is the message worth taking away from this discussion. So, guys, this has been Trevor Commentary. And if you're new to the channel, please remember to subscribe to the channel. Bye for now. See you in the next video.